The heat shimmered on the road like a living thing. Out here, between the county line and Fort Haven's perimeter fence, nothing moved but the air, slow, heavy, dragged down by August. My father drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting too casually on his thigh, tapping his wedding ring against the denim. He hadn't said anything for a while, not since he'd repeated the day's schedule for the third time, and I hadn't nodded. The SUV's air conditioner struggled. The vents blew warm breath against my collarbone. But I didn't complain. I just adjusted the cuff of my blazer and checked my phone. 5 unread messages from Larson, 2 encrypted pings from logistics, 1 flagged status update on a sensitive reroute. My father noticed and scoffed quietly. Texting again. I didn't look at him. Operational. Sure, he said. I remember when operational meant you carried a weapon, not a phone. The gate appeared ahead, a squat steel checkpoint wrapped in layers of heat and authority. My father sat up a little straighter. Let me handle this. It'll go faster. I didn't argue. He rolled down his window and leaned out before the car had fully stopped. Major Jonathan Harper, retired, here for the vice president's arrival. Clearance under Patriot Hall protocol. The young gate guard blinked at the ID in his hand. Sir, this access is expired. Your name's not listed for today. My father's smile was slow and full of certainty. That's because I was invited directly. Call your supervisor. I already pinged the system, the guard said. You'll need to turn around. Sorry. The smile vanished. You're making a mistake. He held out the card again, pushing it forward like a dare. The plastic caught the sun. Old issue frayed along the edges, clipped with a brittle lanyard that had seen decades of offices and inspections. My father didn't notice the quiet panic starting to spread across the guard's face. I did. I unbuckled, stepped out, walked around the front of the vehicle. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I held up a matte black card. No name, no photo, just a flat plane of authority. The scanner blinked once, then again, short, sharp, final. Director Harper, the guard said, voice cracking. He turned away from my father without another word and picked up the red phone bolted to the checkpoint wall. Code 1, Gate 4, immediate clearance. Clear the access lane. My father stared at the scanner, then at me. 2 Humvees peeled off from their standby post and rolled forward. The guard stepped back, saluted without waiting for acknowledgement, and waved me through. I didn't get back in the car. I walked. The staging officer met me 10 paces past the gate. Ma'am, he said, we're ready for your approval on the final lockdown. I nodded. Vice President's vehicle ETA 7 minutes. Confirm second egress secured and drone monitoring live. Yes, ma'am. Agent Larson's team has eyes. I turned finally to my father. He had stepped out of the SUV, but hadn't followed. He stood beside the vehicle, one hand still holding his expired ID. The other dropped to his side like he couldn't figure out what it was for. A breeze caught the edge of his sleeve. This civilian with you, Director? The officer asked. I didn't blink. Temporary support. Escort him with a visitor badge. The officer nodded once and motioned to the nearest agent. My father didn't resist. He walked where they told him. His movements were slow, careful, like someone unsure which rules still applied. We passed the checkpoint line together, but not side by side. He was 3 steps behind me. His pace matched mine, but it wasn't rhythm. It was effort. I remembered watching him once years ago, striding across a parade field while junior officers skewered to keep up. His uniform had been pressed flat and creased like origami. His voice had carried through hot air without amplification. Back then I had counted his footsteps, tried to match them, practiced walking in his shadow without tripping on the edges of it. Now he followed mine. The staging tent was already full when we arrived. Radios cracked and screens flickered. Secret Service agents moved in crisp, practiced arcs. My father hesitated at the flap. Sir, the security lead said, barring his path, visitor access ends at the threshold. I didn't look back. He's with me. Clearance observation only. Inside, Larson approached with a clipboard. Director, motorcade holding at Mark II until your go. Delay by 90 seconds. Egress traffic still clearing. Confirm lockdown after the sweep. I signed and handed back the clipboard. Larson glanced at my father and lowered his voice. Didn't realize you were bringing family today. I wasn't. He nodded, handed me an earpiece, and moved on. Across the tent, General Bryson saluted me. Not the casual kind either. Full extension, sharp angle, no smile. Director Harper, he said. Your call on staging impressed the VP's chief. Thank you. I returned the salute. My team has contingency plans for every gate. Traffic at West Point compromised our old route. We adapted. Bryson turned to my father. You with DHS? Before he could answer, I said, he's retired family. The general nodded without warmth. Understood. A minute passed, then 2. The line of SUVs appeared beyond the ridge. Headlights off, windows black. I gave the signal. Movement began. We watched in silence as the convoy entered the perimeter. The choreography unfolded exactly as I'd written it. No detours, no surprises. My father didn't speak. Behind us, the agents closed ranks around the arriving detail. A sharp series of radio checks passed through the air like thread. I could feel him watching me, not in judgment, not even in confusion. It was the quiet of someone redoing math he had believed solved decades ago. When the vice president stepped from the lead vehicle and offered me his hand, I shook it. The cameras clicked. The moment passed. I turned away from the flash, not toward my father, but toward the exit. He followed. We walked across the field back toward the SUV. At the gate, the same young guard saluted again. Director, he said. Ma'am. My father hesitated, then nodded stiffly. Thank you, son. The boy looked confused, then returned the salute. We got in. The door shut behind him. I pulled away from the gate. He didn't say anything until the highway opened up again. His voice was quiet. They call you director? Yes. He didn't ask for how long. He didn't ask why he didn't know. I didn't offer. You handle motorcades. I handle clearance, routing, timing, access, chain of command, control, credential integrity, and when necessary, I make the final call. He nodded slowly. Sounds like pressure. It is. He was quiet a long time, then said, You always did know how to keep your head. I didn't respond. Praise wasn't the point. At the next light, he shifted in his seat. You've changed. I kept my hands on the wheel. No, I said. You just stopped seeing. 2 nights before the gate, I sat across from my father in his kitchen. The lights above the table were too bright, casting long shadows against the walls. His medals hung in a narrow frame behind him, polished to a mirror finish. The table between us was set like a mission brief. Every plate aligned, every fork squared. He slid an envelope toward me. Not pushed, not tossed, slid like a man offering terms. VIP access, he said, grinning like he'd just pulled a string. That should impress me. Vice President's arrival, staging, full escort. I called in a few favors. I didn't touch the envelope. Why? To get you in. He leaned back in his chair. This could be a turning point for who? He smiled wider. Missing the point for you, Laura. It's time you saw how real leadership works. Not this event planning gig in Chicago. I didn't correct him. I didn't explain the difference between a venue manager and a federal director overseeing interagency logistics for classified travel. I didn't mention the number of times I'd spoken directly with the National Security Advisor or that my badge outranked most uniforms in that room. Instead, I reached for the pitcher of water and refilled my glass. You'll meet real officers, he continued. People who make decisions that matter, might even meet someone who shows you what you've been missing. His tone dipped just slightly into that paternal condescension he'd mastered over decades. You're not getting younger, kiddo. I folded my napkin and set it beside the plate. You invited the neighbors. He looked toward the other end of the table where Marlene and Ron McPhersonson chuckled over cheap wine and tried not to look too interested in our conversation. They'd been hovering near my father since Mom died, offering sympathy wrapped in thin gossip. Marlene had spent the last half hour commenting on the kind of men I should meet, solid types, not these city boys with earrings and opinions. Ron had nodded and said, "Or women these days. Who knows what kids are into?" My father hadn't corrected him. I had. Now, as the envelope sat unopened, my father reached for his wine. Just think about it. Marlene laughed from the far end of the table. I said to Jack the other day, "It's good she's back. Maybe she'll find her feet again." Find my feet. I excused myself. No apology. Just stood, took my plate, rinsed it in silence, and left them at the table. The next morning, he woke me before sunrise. He tapped twice on the door, then stepped in without waiting. "We've got to leave in 2 hours. You'll want to wear something respectable." I laid out a blazer. "I have my own," I said, sitting up. He paused in the doorway. "Try to look sharp. You'll be around dignitaries. I work with them." He didn't hear that part. By the time I came downstairs, he had lined up 2 travel mugs, filled the SUV's tank, and laid a copy of the itinerary on the passenger seat. He was in full command mode, barking out notes about eye contact and posture, about how to shake hands like you mean it. I didn't answer. I was already 10 minutes into a secure call with DHS coordination. There was an unresolved issue at the west side egress point. A civilian truck had broken down on the alternate exit route. If the convoy needed a secondary exit, timing would be critical. Agent Larson briefed me with clipped urgency. "It's a flatbed, no driver. We'll need to delay the VP's vehicle by 90 seconds. Can we authorize the hold?" "Yes, hold at Mark 2. I ended the call and opened my tablet. I updated the contingency plan and reissued credentials to the affected teams. My father watched all of it, mistaking silence for distraction. "You still on that phone?" "I'm coordinating." He shook his head. "You used to be so focused. Don't let that screen run your life." The SUV rolled onto the expressway. He drummed his fingers on the wheel and told me about how generals used to inspect the troops by surprise. I remember when command actually meant something. When people listened, I know. He misread my calm. We passed the old water tower, still rusted at the seams, then the strip mall where I'd worked at 16. He glanced at me. "You remember this place?" "I remember everything." He nodded, satisfied. "Good. It's important to remember where you come from." I tapped into the DHS control system and watched the little icons move across the screen. The lead vehicle had entered the perimeter. The outer buffer zone was holding. No unexpected chatter on the encrypted band. He kept talking. "I always hoped you'd end up here. Not necessarily the base, but something respectable. Not all that event stuff." My voice was steady. "It's not event stuff." He smiled like he'd won something. I know you've got your little program just saying this. This is the real world. The real world." We arrived at the outer gate. He rolled down the window before the car stopped and leaned out again. "Major Jonathan Harper, retired. My daughter and I are here for the Vice President's arrival. Credentials under Patriot Hall protocol." The guard checked the list. "Sir, your ID doesn't match the list. I can't authorize entry." My father scowled. "Son, check again or call someone who knows what they're doing." The guard didn't flinch. "Sir, please pull into the turnaround lane." He turned to me annoyed. "Say something." I opened the door. I stepped out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I held out my card. The scanner beeped twice. Short, final. The gate guard turned white. He reached for the emergency phone and called it in. "Code 1, Gate 4, priority vehicle. Clear the lane." The barrier dropped. The SUV idled. I stood still. A voice came over the comms. "Director Harper, welcome. Agent Elson is inbound." My father watched all of it from the driver's seat. I didn't look at him until the SUV pulled forward. I opened the passenger door and got in. He sat stiffly behind the wheel. "Drive," I said. He drove. We entered the perimeter in silence. The staging area came into view. Agents formed up along the perimeter. The convoy hadn't moved yet. From the tent, Larson stepped out and walked directly to my window. "Director Harper," he said. We were starting to worry. My father stared. Larson held out a tablet. "Signature, ma'am," I signed. He glanced at my father. "Is this civilian with you, ma'am? Or should we detain him for delaying checkpoint operations?" I didn't blink. "He's with me. Mark him support staff. Issue a visitor badge." My father opened his mouth, closed it. Larson nodded. "Yes, ma'am." An agent stepped forward with a yellow badge clipped to a plain lanyard. "Visitor," it read in bold black text. My father took it without protest. We walked. I led. He followed 300 yards through dust and heat and silence. I heard the salute before I saw it. A general full stars. "Director Harper," he said. My father slowed, watched. The salute was not for him. The command was not his. And the silence, for once, wasn't mine. He used to walk ahead of me in airports, in hallways, in hardware stores. I used to match his pace without thinking. Back straight, shoulders square, eyes alert. His posture taught me that. Years of shadowing his stride until it felt like my own. But now, as we crossed the asphalt between the convoy and the command tent, I didn't slow for him. I didn't check to see if he was keeping up. I walked the way I was trained to walk, with purpose, with awareness, with every step accounted for. Behind me, I heard the faint jingle of the visitor badge against his chest. The plastic lanyard snapped lightly against his collarbone with each step. It had been clipped there by a young agent whose entire expression had changed the moment I spoke. That's how authority works. One sentence and people move. I didn't need to explain myself to the staff, but for my father, everything was a surprise. He hadn't spoken since the gate. Not during the walk, not during the general's salute, not even when I signed off on the motorcade delay and updated the secondary checkpoint protocols. The sound of me giving orders, clean, direct, precise, seemed to hollow him out. His mouth opened once as if to say something, but no sound came. He watched the staging area form around us like a play he hadn't been invited to. Elson returned with updated briefings. "Ma'am, White Hill staging complete. All vehicles checked and swept. Convoy will begin final approach on your mark." I nodded. "Hold the VP's SUV until the security sweep on the north perimeter clears. I want drone confirmation, not just visual." "Yes, ma'am. Drone uplink confirms in 90 seconds. Then we hold." Larson turned to relay the order. My father looked at the line of black vehicles stretching along the gravel edge of the airfield. He turned toward me. "You're running this?" I didn't answer. He took a slow breath. "The agents, the vehicles, all this?" Still, I didn't answer. I didn't need to. A second agent approached and handed me a digital tablet. "We have 2 substitutions on the guest list. Final credential authority needed." I scanned the names. Civilian contractors. Low risk, but the timing was tight. Deny one. Approve one. Send the denial with the standard clause. Clearance lag. Move the approved one to Zone 3 with escort. "Yes, ma'am." He waited until the agent left. "You just removed someone from the event. Not removed. Restricted access. Classification lag. Happens daily." His silence stretched between us. Heavy, but not hostile. Just confused, recalculating. "You said you did coordination." "I do." He frowned. "But this isn't coordination. This is command." I looked at him. Not long, just enough. He opened his mouth again, then closed it. Agent Elson returned. "All checkpoints green. We have full visual and aerial coverage." I gave a single nod. "Proceed." And the world shifted. The motorcade began to roll forward. Engines low, disciplined, each vehicle exact in its place. Not a sound wasted. This wasn't just coordination. This was choreography. My choreography. I designed the route myself, mapped each approach, calculated every possible delay. I'd adjusted the timeline by less than 2 minutes to compensate for weather, for construction, for an unexpected detour that no one else had even noticed. Now I watched it unfold from the command post. Calm, quiet. The VP's SUV passed through the final checkpoint. The interior screens showed the facial recognition lock clearing. Larson murmured into his radio, then turned to me. "They're requesting your presence at staging." I moved. He followed. My father, still clutching the useless ID from his retirement wallet, hesitated, then trailed after us. We walked across the compound toward the arriving detail. This time, no one saluted him. A woman in a dark suit opened the door for me. Inside, the vice president stepped out and extended his hand. "Director Harper, thank you for the seamless security corridor. The chief of staff says you saved us at least a full day." I shook his hand. "My team is efficient." He smiled. "You've got quite a reputation in the Capitol. Would be good to see you in D.C. again." I offered the practiced nod. "I go where I'm needed, sir." The exchange lasted under a minute. Then I stepped aside and the VP moved forward with his detail. My father watched the entire thing from 10 feet away, standing awkwardly behind a vehicle marked staff transport. Larson turned toward him. "You'll need to stay in the yellow zone, sir." Director Harper's briefing continues in red. He looked at me. "You're going to the next stage alone. I always do." I thought I didn't let him finish. I turned and walked. Inside the red tent, I signed 3 more authorizations. I reviewed new data from field sensors and updated contingency plans for 2 more potential threats. One was a local protester list. The other was a traffic disruption 4 miles from the secondary site. I moved through each briefing without pause. Then I left the tent. Outside, he was waiting. His tie was askew. The yellow badge hung too large against his shirt. He looked older than he had at breakfast. "You're really the one running this?" It wasn't a question anymore. "You plan all this?" I nodded. He stared at the ground. I didn't know." I didn't reply. He shook his head. "You don't tell people. That's the thing." I didn't nod. I didn't disagree. "You've been doing this how long?" 7 years. And you never said." I waited, then said, "I didn't need to." He rubbed the back of his neck. "That neighbor back home, Ron, he thinks you work with caterers." "I know." He shook his head again, slower this time. And I let him. I noticed. He was quiet for a long time. Then he looked up. "They salute you." "Yes." "And you're not wearing a uniform?" "No." He studied me again like he was seeing something rebuilt. "When did that happen? When did you become?" He didn't finish the sentence. I let the silence fill the gap. The line of SUVs rolled past us, now empty, now at rest. The mission phase had ended. The clearance zone was already shifting. I turned toward the vehicle. He followed slower. We got in. The door closed behind him. "I thought you were just coordinating," he said again, softer. "I used to. And now I decide who gets through." He swallowed. "You always were good under pressure." I didn't nod. I didn't thank him. We reached the highway again. The SUV hummed beneath us, the air conditioner clicking into balance. He cleared his throat. "You were always calm, even as a kid. Never cried much. I changed lanes. That's not always a compliment." "No," he said, "but it was noticed." He looked out the window. "I used to think you were too soft, too nice. Let people talk over you. You thought wrong." He didn't argue. 5 miles later, he said, "I tried to help." "I know." He hesitated. "Doesn't mean I didn't get it wrong." I kept my eyes on the road. He shifted in his seat. "I used to think I knew everything about strength. I didn't respond." He continued. "But sometimes strength isn't volume. He paused. "Holding your ground when no one's watching." He turned to me. "I didn't watch enough, did I?" "No." We crossed a long overpass. Below us, freight trains crawled through the yard, lights blinking like slow thoughts. The GPS beeped quietly. He ignored it. "You remember that summer I made you go to that leadership camp?" I did. Of course I did. It was 3 weeks of lectures on teamwork and rope courses designed to simulate war zones. I'd come home with blisters and silence. You didn't say a word the whole ride back. I didn't say anything now either. He tapped his thumb on his leg. I thought that silence meant failure, like it didn't work. But now he didn't finish. We pulled into the first rest stop past the base. He unbuckled. I need a minute. Stretch my legs. I nodded. 5 minutes. He stepped out, stretched, looked around like he was trying to orient himself in a new city, even though it was just a rest stop. Before he shut the door, he looked back in. You know, he said, your mother would have loved to see this. I know. She always said you were the one who saw everything, even when you didn't say it. I met his eyes. She was right. He stood there a moment longer, then nodded and shut the door. I watched him walk away. In the rearview mirror, the yellow badge caught the sunlight once. Then he disappeared behind the row of vending machines. I opened my tablet, checked the convoy logs, updated the pass-through summary, reissued 3 access tokens for the afternoon brief. Then I put the tablet down and sat with my hands resting quietly on my knees. Because there was nothing left to prove, only the quiet recalibration of a man who thought he knew his daughter and now understood she'd built something without ever needing to ask his permission. The ride back was silent. He kept glancing at me from the passenger seat, small sideways looks like he was watching a stranger drive his car. Or maybe not a stranger. Maybe someone familiar but in a uniform he didn't recognize. The dashboard clock ticked past 1700. My phone buzzed with a coded update from Larson, already confirming the handoff at the airfield was complete. The vice president was on his way back to the Capitol. No incidents, no breaches. The day had moved exactly as planned. Clean, quiet, sharp. He cleared his throat. You hungry? No. Your mom's making roast. I didn't answer. She started it before we left. You should stop in, eat. The street ahead narrowed into old neighborhoods. I knew every curve, every patched crack in the pavement. I had counted those cracks as a kid, walking home in shoes that were always too small by the time anyone noticed. You remember the Ferris boy? He asked. Lived 3 houses down? I nodded. He's back in town. Teaches at the high school. Married now. Says he remembers you from Scouts. I wasn't in Scouts. He blinked. Oh, must have been your sister. She was in dance. He let out a breath. Right. We turned onto his street. The oak trees cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalk. The same white truck was parked at the corner, the same garden hose coiled on the same faded hook. Nothing had changed except me. I pulled into the driveway and shifted into park. He didn't move to open the door. I didn't know about the court case, he said finally. I kept my hands on the wheel. I didn't tell you. Your aunt, the loan thing, $59,000. He winced. That much? She opened it in my name, ran up credit, used my number. He nodded slowly. She told us you were overreacting. I wasn't. I see that now. No, you see the outcome. He turned to me. You took her to court alone. She always said I know what she said. She said you let her. I looked at him. That's what people like her say. He pressed his palms together, resting them against his lips. And you won? Yes. Did she go to jail? No, I didn't press charges. Just restitution. That's generous. No, I said it's efficient. He looked at his knees. Why didn't you ask for help? I did, I said. You didn't believe me. The silence between us turned dense. He didn't argue. He didn't offer excuses. For the first time in a long time, he simply listened. I sent you the documents, I said. Statements, the flagged activity, the notifications. He nodded barely. Your mother thought it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't. We thought maybe you'd given her permission. You know, family helping family. I don't need help. I said, I need boundaries. He exhaled. We were wrong. I nodded. Yes. He stared at the dashboard. I should have asked. I didn't answer. He added quieter. I should have trusted you. I turned off the engine. He looked up. You're not coming in. No, your mom's expecting. I've got a debrief in 40 minutes. He swallowed. I could tell her, do what you want. His voice dropped. "You don't want to come inside." I looked at the house. The lights were on, the blinds drawn, the same porch light that had always buzzed. I could see the corner of the living room where I used to sit after school, trying not to ask questions. "No," I said. He shifted. "You could tell her about the VP, the detail, what they said to you." "I don't need to." He blinked. "Why not?" "Because you saw it." He sat back like that answer had weight. He nodded slow and shallow. "You're right." I reached for my tablet. He looked at the glove box. "You always this calm?" "Yes." "Even back then?" "No, I said I earned it." He didn't speak for a moment then. "Your mother used to say you were too quiet. She said I was calculating. She meant it as a compliment." "No, I said she meant it as a warning." He gave a small laugh. Not cruel, not dismissive, just tired. "That sounds like her." I nodded. "It does." He opened the door, stopped halfway, turned back. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't." He nodded. "You'll call." "Maybe." He stepped out, closed the door gently. No slam, no drama. I watched him walk to the house, the yellow badge still clipped to his shirt. It didn't match anything he was wearing. It didn't match anything he believed about himself. He opened the front door and disappeared inside. I sat there for another minute,